It starts quietly. So quietly that even you don't notice it at first. You're sitting at a table, maybe 7 years old, maybe 9, watching something crack inside the room. There is tension in the air so thick you could almost reach out and touch it. The adults around you are either too loud or too silent, and neither feels safe. You look around and no one is looking back. You feel something rise in your chest. Something urgent, something hot, something that has no name yet. Your throat tightens. Your eyes burn. Every cell in your small body wants to cry out, to ask someone to please just notice. But then, almost instinctively, something extraordinary happens. The corners of your mouth move upward. You smile. Not because you are happy. You smile because you are terrified of what happens if you don't. No one notices the shift. No one sees the tiny psychological earthquake happening behind your eyes. To everyone in that room, you are fine. You are calm. You are easy. And the world rewards you immediately. Someone ruffles your hair. Someone says you're such a good kid. The tension in the room drops by a fraction because you absorbed it. You became the solution to a problem that was never yours to solve. Without realizing it, your mind makes a decision. A silent, subconscious, irreversible decision. It calculates, the way only a frightened child's brain can, that your pain is dangerous. That your sadness is a burden. That your tears cost something you cannot afford to pay. Your nervous system begins to rewrite its own code. It learns that emotional honesty leads to discomfort, disapproval, or abandonment. And so it builds a workaround. A mask so elegant, so convincing, that even you will eventually forget it is a mask at all. This is not weakness. This is the most sophisticated survival strategy a developing mind can create. You are not broken. You are brilliantly, tragically adaptive. The decision becomes a reflex. The reflex becomes a habit. The habit becomes a personality. You become quieter, more aware, more careful. You learn to read a room before you enter it fully. You learn to scan faces the way a soldier scans terrain, looking for signs of danger disguised as ordinary moments. You learn to laugh at the right time, to deflect with humor when things get too real, to say, "I'm fine," with such practiced ease that the words no longer feel like a lie, they feel like oxygen. You learn to hold space for everyone else's emotions while quietly suffocating beneath the weight of your own. You become the person who checks on others, the one who stays calm in the crisis, the one who somehow always knows what to say. You become someone people describe as strong, as grounded, as unshakable. And every time they say it, there is a flicker, something behind your eyes that almost speaks, almost breaks the surface, almost tells the truth. But you smile instead. People begin to praise what is quietly destroying you. Your teachers call you mature for your age. Your friends call you the stable one. Your family leans on you without asking if you can carry the weight. You're so strong, they say, and you nod because what else is there to do? You have been strong for so long that you no longer remember what it felt like to be held. You never seem bothered by anything, they observe as if it is a compliment, as if the absence of visible pain means the absence of pain altogether. As if silence equals peace. But no one asks what it costs you. No one asks what you do at night when the performance is over and the audience has gone home. No one asks why your smile arrives a half-second too fast, why your eyes don't quite follow your mouth, why you sometimes laugh and then go somewhere very far away behind your own face. No one asks because you have made it so easy for them not to. You become so fluent in the language of performing okayness that you begin to lose access to your own interior world. You stop knowing what you actually feel because feeling was never safe and the mind is efficient. It stops producing what it cannot use. You go numb in the most invisible way possible. Not dramatically. Not in a way anyone would notice or name. Just a quiet, spreading flatness beneath the performance. A distance between you and your own life that grows so gradually you almost don't notice until one day you are sitting somewhere perfectly pleasant, surrounded by people who love you, and you feel absolutely nothing at all. And you smile anyway, because that is what you do, because that is who you are now. Psychologists call this emotional masking. But more specifically, what you have been living inside is something researchers describe as a fawning response, a fourth survival mode that exists alongside fight, flight, and freeze. Most people know about fight or flight. Fewer know about fawn. It is the response that emerges most often in people who grew up in environments where expressing authentic emotion felt dangerous, where love felt conditional, where keeping the peace was a survival skill, not a choice. The fawn response teaches your nervous system that the safest way to exist is to become whatever the room needs you to be. To anticipate discomfort before it arrives and neutralize it with warmth, with humor, with a smile that costs you everything and appears to cost you nothing. This is not a character flaw. This is a nervous system doing exactly what it was trained to do. The problem is that it was trained in a world that no longer exists, by a version of you that no longer needs to survive that way. What happens in the brain during years of emotional suppression is not metaphorical. It is neurological, measurable, and deeply consequential. When you consistently override your authentic emotional responses, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for emotional regulation and self-awareness, begins to lose its connection to the limbic system, the seat of your feelings. In simpler terms, your thinking brain and your feeling brain stop talking to each other. You become excellent at analyzing emotion in others while growing increasingly disconnected from your own. You can name what someone else is feeling in a room full of people, but sit quietly with your own chest and find nothing but static. Your cortisol levels, the body's primary stress hormone, remain chronically elevated because suppressed emotion does not disappear. It metabolizes inward. It becomes tension in your jaw, tightness in your shoulders, a low-grade exhaustion that no amount of sleep ever fully resolves. Your body keeps the score even when your face refuses to show it. The smile becomes not just a social tool but a physiological override. You are quite literally using facial muscle movement to interrupt your body's natural emotional processing. And you have done it so many times for so many years that the override has become the default setting. And so you arrive at adulthood carrying invisible weight that the world never helped you name. You might find yourself incapable of asking for help, even when you are drowning, even when the water is at your chin. Something inside you insists that need is shameful, that vulnerability is a burden you have no right to place on others. You might notice that you are deeply uncomfortable when people take care of you. When someone offers genuine softness, genuine attention, genuine concern, you deflect it. You make a joke. You minimize. You say you are fine before they have even finished asking. You might find yourself attracted to people who need a lot from you, because being needed feels safer than being known. You understand how to give. Receiving feels foreign, almost threatening, like standing in a room where you don't know where the exits are. You might feel loneliest in the moments when you are surrounded by the most people. Because you are there, but the real you, the unperforming, unsmiling, unmanaging you, is somewhere far behind the glass, watching, never quite arriving. You might be so good at appearing fine that when you finally do break, when something in you finally cracks open after years of silent pressure, the people around you are genuinely shocked. They didn't see it coming because you made sure they wouldn't. You protected them from the truth of you so completely that your collapse feels to them like a surprise, and to you, it feels like a betrayal of everything you worked to maintain. Here is the painful truth that no one prepares you for. The very thing that kept you safe as a child is now the thing keeping you from being truly known as an adult. What was once armor has become a cage. What once protected you is now isolating you. The smile that saved your childhood is slowly stealing your adulthood. You built walls because walls were necessary once. But walls do not know how to distinguish between the people who hurt you and the people who want to love you. They keep everything out with equal efficiency. And so you remain defended inside a life that looks, from the outside, completely fine. The mask you built in childhood was an act of extraordinary intelligence. But you are no longer a child in a room with no safe exits. You are an adult with choices, with resources, with the capacity for something you were never offered before. Real safety, chosen consciously, created deliberately. The tragedy is not that you built the mask. The tragedy is believing you still need it. Somewhere beneath the performance, beneath the years of practiced okayness, there is still a child sitting in that room. Waiting. Not for rescue exactly, but for something simpler and more devastating than rescue. Waiting to be noticed. Waiting for someone to look past the smile and ask the real question. That child is still inside you. Psychologists call this the inner child, but the clinical language almost softens it too much. What we are really talking about is the part of you that never got to finish grieving. The part that learned to need less because needing more felt too dangerous. The part that became so small and so quiet and so accommodating that eventually even you forgot it was there. But it is there. It speaks in the exhaustion you feel after social interactions that looked to everyone else like joy. It speaks in the way your chest tightens when someone cancels plans, not because you wanted to go but because cancellation feels, somewhere deep and irrational, like confirmation of something you have always feared about your own worth. It speaks in the questions you have never let yourself ask out loud. Why didn't anyone notice I was struggling? Why did I have to become the strong one before I was strong enough to carry it? Why did love always feel like something I had to earn with my composure? These are not rhetorical questions. They are the beginning of something. They are the first honest words spoken in a conversation that your inner life has been trying to start for years. And the fact that they hurt, the fact that reading them makes something in your throat tighten, means the part of you that needed to be seen is still alive. It survived everything. It survived the smiling and the performing and the years of minimizing. It is still here, underneath all of it, holding the original wound with both hands, waiting for you to finally turn toward it instead of away. This is where healing actually begins. Not in the fixing. Not in the optimizing. Not in becoming a more emotionally intelligent version of the same masked person. Healing begins in the turning. In the moment you stop moving away from the pain and simply face it, the way you would face a child standing alone in a hallway and say, "I see you. I'm sorry it took so long. I'm here now." Healing does not start with fixing what is broken. It starts with understanding why the breaking made sense. Every wall you built had a reason. Every smile you performed was protecting something real. Every time you said, "I'm fine," when you weren't, you were doing the only thing you knew how to do with pain that had nowhere safe to go. That is not weakness. That is not dysfunction. That is a human being doing the most human thing possible, surviving the gap between the love they needed and the love they received. You are not broken. You are someone who learned the wrong lessons from the right instincts. You felt everything correctly. You just had to hide it incorrectly because the environment you were in left you no other option. And here is where the shame must be gently, deliberately removed. Because shame will tell you that the mask means you are fake, that the performance means you are manipulative, that the suppression means you are emotionally stunted. Shame is not honest. Shame is just the voice of old survival logic trying to remain relevant in a life it no longer fits. The behavior that is making your adult life smaller was never about weakness. It was about a nervous system that made a perfectly rational calculation in an irrational situation. A child cannot regulate a dysregulated environment. A child cannot heal an adult's wounds. A child cannot create safety that the adults in the room are failing to provide. So the child does the next best thing. The child becomes the safety, becomes the calm, becomes the smile. And we should not pathologize that child. We should honor them. And then gently we should let them rest. There is an inner work question worth sitting with, not rushing through, not journaling mechanically, but truly sitting with, in silence, with honest attention. What did I need that I never received? Not what did I want? Not what would have been nice. What did I actually need in those rooms, in those moments, from those people that never came? Maybe you needed someone to notice the performance and look past it. Maybe you needed permission to fall apart without the relationship falling apart with you. Maybe you needed to be told, once, clearly, that your sadness was not a problem to be managed but a feeling to be witnessed. Whatever the answer is, it matters. Because the unmet need doesn't disappear when childhood ends. It follows you. It shapes every relationship you enter, every conflict you avoid, every moment you smile when you mean to speak. Carl Jung wrote that what you resist persists, and what you accept transforms. He understood something that took psychology decades to formalize, that the psyche does not heal through suppression. It heals through integration, through bringing the hidden parts of yourself into consciousness and offering them something they never had before, acknowledgement. Jung called the hidden self the shadow, not because it is dark or shameful, but because it lives in the places you have not yet learned to look. Your pain is part of your shadow. Your grief is part of your shadow. The unsmiling, unperforming, exhausted version of you that exists behind the mask. That is not your worst self. That is your most honest self. And integration means letting that self have a seat at the table of your own life. You didn't have a choice then. The environment made the decision before you were old enough to understand that a decision was being made. You were handed a role, the strong one, the stable one, the one who doesn't need much. And you played it brilliantly because playing it brilliantly was the only way to stay safe inside a world you did not choose and could not change. But you are not in that room anymore. You are not that child anymore. And the role that was assigned to you then does not have to be the role you carry forever. You are allowed to put it down. Not dramatically, not all at once, but slowly, the way you set down something very heavy after carrying it for so long that your arms have forgotten what it feels like to be empty. You have a choice now that you did not have then. The choice to let someone see you struggle without immediately reassuring them that you are fine. The choice to sit with discomfort instead of performing your way past it. The choice to say, "I don't know how I feel," instead of reaching automatically for the answer that keeps everything smooth and everyone comfortable. These feel like small choices. They are not small. They are revolutionary acts for someone who was trained to believe that their authentic emotional experience was a danger to the people they loved. The path forward is not about becoming someone who no longer smiles. Smiling is not the enemy. Joy is not the enemy. The enemy is the compulsion, the inability to access anything other than the smile, the reflexive override that activates before you have even had a chance to check in with what you actually feel. The work is about creating space between the stimulus and the response, between the difficult moment and the automatic performance. That space, even a breath wide, even a second long, is where your freedom lives. It is where the real you begins to exist again, tentatively at first, like something learning to walk after a long time being still. Therapy can help create that space. So can stillness. So can honest conversation with someone you have decided, deliberately and courageously, to trust. So can the simple, radical act of asking yourself, before the smile arrives, before the "I'm fine" forms, what is actually happening inside me right now? Not what should be happening. Not what is convenient. What is true. You are allowed to be complicated. You are allowed to be sad in rooms where everyone expects you to be happy. You are allowed to need things from people without that need making you weak or burdensome or too much. You are allowed to be too much. You were told once, in ways that were never spoken directly but were felt completely, that your full self was more than the room could hold. That was not the truth. That was the limitation of the room. You are not too much. You were simply in spaces that were too small. And part of healing is learning to find and build and inhabit spaces large enough to contain the entirety of who you are, including the grief, including the exhaustion, including the part of you that has been performing since before it knew what a performance was. There is something quietly extraordinary about a person who survived by learning to hold everyone else's world together while their own quietly trembled. There is a kind of love in it, imperfect, learned in fear, but love nonetheless. You cared about the people around you so deeply that you made yourself smaller to protect them from your pain. That impulse came from something real and something good. The problem was never the caring. The problem was the cost and the silence around the cost, and the way the cost was never acknowledged because you never let anyone see the invoice. You are allowed to let people see the invoice now. Not to punish them. Not to demand repayment for years of invisible labor. But because real intimacy, the kind that actually sustains a human life, cannot exist between a person and a performance. It can only exist between two people who have agreed, however imperfectly, to be real with each other. And you deserve that. Not as a reward for having survived so well, but simply because you are human, and being human means deserving to be known. So here is what is true beneath everything. Beneath the psychology and the neuroscience and the childhood rooms and the nervous system responses and the mask that became a face. Beneath all of it, there is simply a person who felt too much in a world that asked them to feel less, and found the most elegant possible way to keep loving that world anyway. That is not a disorder. That is not a diagnosis. That is one of the most tender and heartbreaking things a human being can do. And it deserves to be witnessed, finally, without the smile in the way. You never had the safety to fall apart. But you still have the time to be put back together, not into who you were before the mask because that person was very young and the world has changed, but into someone new. Someone who carries the resilience of everything you survived and the softness of everything you were never allowed to show. Someone who can smile, and mean it this time, fully, freely, without anything hidden behind it, without any cost attached to it, just the smile and behind it finally yourself.